So Glenn, the fan always comes out in me, and I love movies. My son loves movies, and I think of like a Quentin Tarantino, Steven Spielberg. Do you have some experiences or some stories you could share with us? Because I love the behind the scenes type of stories our guests can bring to the listeners.
I do. I actually have stories with both of those gentlemen. I'll start with Quentin Tarantino. Probably 8 years ago ish, I was in Austin, Texas, doing my one-man program called The Extra Mile. And I was performing in a nice little venue that had an adjacent coffee house to it. And it was an afternoon matinee performance. And so I'm grabbing some chai latte on my way in. And I'm standing in line when I hear, Glenn. And I turn around because I'm in Austin. I'm not in my hometown. So I turn around and I look, and it's Quentin Tarantino.
And he has a very distinctive voice. So I'm sure you...
When I heard Glenn, I didn't connect the dots. Okay. I just looked to see who was calling my name, or maybe it was some other Glenn that was in line. I don't know. And I turned, and I must have done a triple take, like, that's weird. Quentin Tarantino is calling me by name in an Austin coffee house.
And he must have been there for Robert Rodriguez or something they were doing together, potentially.
I don't know why.
Okay.
I do now, but I didn't know why at the time. And he goes, hey, when you get your coffee, come sit with me. Okay, now it's getting interesting. And I grabbed my drink and I went over and sat down. He said, how are you, man? It's about time we met. And I said, hi. I said, what are you in town for? And he told me he was working with Robert. And he said, and I also, Austin's kind of a second home for me. I spent a lot of time here. I love the vibe of this city. And I saw in the newspaper that you were going to be here. So the reason I'm here, not in Austin, but the reason I'm here today is I'm here to see your show.
Wow, nice.
And I said, fantastic. He said, the reason I called you over is I wanted to give you a heads up so you didn't think I was rude. He said, I will be leaving halfway through your show. And I saw you had an intermission. I want you to know that I will be leaving at intermission and I won't be coming back. And I didn't want you to think I had walked out on your show. He said, I already had a commitment for today, but I had a window of opportunity to at least see the first half of it. And I'm genuinely curious what you're going to talk about today. So I told him anyway. He said, I said, it's a pleasure to meet you. We should work together at some point. He said, I have followed you for a long time. I said, what's a long time? And he said, how does Drive-In grab you?
Wow. Okay.
It's my first movie.
Yes.
1975. I have the lead in the film. And I said, you are buttering my toast. And he said, no, I mean it for real. I said, why would you have seen Drive-In? He said, it's a cult favorite, man. He said, I love that film. I've seen it multiple times. And then he started describing it. And he wasn't using Google. He was describing it with characters and all that. I thought, son of a gun, you are a fan of the film. So we had a great discussion. Quentin loved the show. About 6 months later, I'm in Los Angeles. And a friend of mine says, dude, Drive-In is playing in a theater. Now, this is only 8 to 10 years ago. So this is long after its run, which was in the summer of 1976. Why is Drive-In in a movie theater? It's hard to get on tape even. And they said, yeah. And I thought, well, this is great for my kids. Certainly they've seen the movie, but they've only seen it on tape. They've never seen it on television, and they've never seen it on a big screen. So I got to take my family to see my first film. And when I go down there, I realize that it is at the Beverly Cinema, which is owned by Quentin Tarantino.
Wow.
Which is why it was playing there. And it was a really brand spanking new print of the film. So no old scratchy lines, no fatigue. Looked like we'd shot the movie last week. And I sent him a thank you note and left it in the box office. I said, thank you for your efforts to get a great brand new print of the film. So that was beautiful. The Spielberg story was just that Steven was the executive producer of all of the Transformer movies. And so even though he didn't direct them, he's certainly directly involved and looking at every inch of footage. And so he got to know me through my role of General Morshower on on the very first Transformers. And then he said to Michael, he said, I want you to keep using him. And I understand why you chose him. And I only know this because Michael told me. Michael reached out and he said, you need to know that Stephen really likes your work. And there's something specific he likes about it. And would you be interested in knowing? I said, well, of course. Who wouldn't want to know what Steven Spielberg likes about you? And he said, he loves your stillness. Mm. He said, your on-camera stillness is powerful. He also said, I've never seen someone not blink for long periods of time. And it's one of the things I teach my actors is how to not blink for 5 to 10 minutes at a time. And he loved it. So he's gone on to put me in several things. And he was the one who got the say-so about the Transformers ride. That was up to Steven Spielberg. So when I opened the ride and they declared me to be the one that would do the opening, which was such an honor, I got there to Universal Studios in Hollywood, and this was in 2012, spring of 2012, and Steven Spielberg was standing there. And I said, it's a pleasure to finally meet you. He said, I'm here to watch you open our ride.
No pressure.
I said, so you'll be up there with me? And he said, no, baby, this is your show. And I went, excuse me? And he goes, there's nobody else. This is you. You will be the only one up on stage. I thought it would be Michael Bay, president of Universal, and maybe the mayor of Los Angeles. Who knows? They gave me the microphone and said, have at it. And Steven was there. And I looked down and he's got his cell phone. And he's filming the event with his own cell phone. And I thought, this is kind of cool. So now we run into each other again in Orlando a year later when they opened the Orlando Transformers ride. And he said, hey, Glenn, Michael can't be here. He wanted to be here today, but he's shooting some movie. And why don't we make a video for Michael? And I said, sure. And he goes, I'll just do it with my cell phone. And I thought, I'm kind of in this moment, I'm kind of being directed by Steven Spielberg. I mean, albeit it's his cell phone, but It's still Steven like this. And there is a great shot, which I can send you on YouTube, a moment where if you put Steven Spielberg and General Morshower, just put that, you will see it's the shot of Steven holding up because some other fan took it. And I'm so grateful they did, because it's Steven holding his cell on one side of the screen and I'm standing there talking to Michael Bay on the other. And it's just lovely. Listen, I've had so much excess in my life, Kyle. All that's left to do between now and my earthly departure is helping other people have their dreams come true, because mine already have.
Wow. Very powerful. Great story on Steven. And the fact, now again, you guys do so much media, but acting is behind closed doors, and most people aren't used to giving presentations. And the fact you're a professional speaker had to have helped you in that situation.
Oh, without question.
Hey, it's all yours,
Without question. And I don't know where he decided that I would have the wherewithal to do that, because I was never consulted.
Yeah.
I was invited to host that day, but they never said it will just be you. I don't know. So I don't know if they did their research, but certainly I draw upon it, because to me, a live audience is so invigorating. I mean, when I'm doing your events, I love that. I mean, this is great that we're one-on-one, but I also love it when we can take questions from the audience, and in your masterminds, your monthly meetings. Yes. Those are great fun for me on Zoom. I love it.
No, that's awesome. Let me ask you about the Extra Mile. Tell us a little bit more about that.
It is a program that I named about human consciousness and about the consciousness of winning expectation, based on the 4 rooms of mindset rooms of impossibility, possibility, probability, and inevitability. I realized that my whole life I have lived expecting things to go well, and that I've spent 0 time hoping they would. I expected that they would. And I'm not saying this from a dogmatic place, but so, for example, I think, does hope have a position? Yes, it does. You would never want to remove someone's hope, but hope is only a great beginning. Because if we stop at hope, we're really dead in the water. It's a great beginning. I even think it's a necessary beginning, but I'm going to give you a very practical description of this. So before I came on today, let me tell you how glamorous my life was between 11:30 and 12:45, because I came on with you at 1. Between 11:30 and 12:45, here's what I looked at. I want to make the bed. I want to get the cat hair off of the bed because we have 8. You heard me right. 8
Wow. Okay.
cats. And they leave a lot of hair. So I began by vacuuming. Now, I'm married to a wonderful housewife, but I don't feel that anything is her responsibility. It's probably why we're still married, is we both figure whoever's there when something needs to be done does it. So I started with that. I didn't stand around hoping there wouldn't be cat hair. And I didn't sit around hoping the bed would make itself. There's a huge lesson to be learned about that. And then I looked and realized we had some dishes from last night. And I wasted no time hoping they would get clean. And I had a load of laundry to do, and I didn't hope that it would be neatly folded. So instead, I mean, I'm overstating the obvious, but at some point you have to add intentionality and commitment and follow through to those things. And by 1 hour and 15 minutes, within an hour and 15 minutes, it's now 15 minutes before I'm scheduled to go on with you, everything that was needed in my home was done, with everything finished, which makes getting on with you feel fantastic because I'm already in achievement mode. I'm already in that get things done mode. So I encourage people to get things done and then watch how much easier it is to get bigger things done because they're rehearsing that pattern of getting things done. Who are you? I'm someone who gets things done. Who else are you? I'm someone who things get better when I'm around. This is not said from ego. I coach this to my students that you need to be able to say things are better when I'm around versus the obvious, which would be awful, is, I can't help but notice that things get worse when I'm nearby. It's a terrible thing to be able to say. So do things get better when you're around? Are circumstances lighter? Are they easier? Is the air less thick? Is there love present when you're around? Do people feel better or worse near you? And then when you commit to all of the above being improvements, then you live differently. And I think the biggest key, so this is the essence of the extra mile. I started basing my career on my life as on how I live. And coaching programs have awakened to this, by the way. Over the years, they've realized if you want to coach business, coach humanity first. If you want to improve the individual, improve their humanity first. First and foremost, don't even talk to them about money until you get them aligned, until you get them alive, until you get them empowered, until you get them grateful. And when someone starts their day with gratitude, I mean, I'll ask you as my brother, is there a better way to start a day than gratitude?
That's where it begins.
That's where it all begins, and just several times throughout your day to stop and look around and go, yes, yes, yes. And just how fortunate I am. And not because you've acquired things. I got to tell you, I'm one of the not interested in acquiring things people. I don't care about the size of my home. I don't care what my cars that I drive. I have a 2007 Infiniti and my dad's 2000 Buick. I can afford to drive any car I want. It doesn't mean anything to me. A car gets me from one place to the next. I'm not trying to impress anyone. And there's nothing wrong with having a brand spanking new car and probably going to replace that Buick here pretty soon because it's having some old age issues. But it will never be a status symbol for me. It'll be, what car do I like?
Is it almost the opposite for you? Are you just making a statement to yourself that you don't want to? Does it buy you something to say, Yeah, it keeps me in check somehow.
I get that. And I think in part, yes, that it certainly keeps me humble, that if I know that I could buy something brand new in cash, not have to make a payment, just here, give me that one. I'd like that
Right.
one. Then great. Or is it okay that I have a really well-running new car, ish? My Infinity is a badass. It runs beautifully. And then there's this old clunker that I would never have purchased, but it's my dad's.
Yeah.
And he's deceased. And I still have the car that he purchased with me. I was with him the day he bought it. And I watched him wheel and deal, and he paid the minimum. And so when I get in it, I feel him.
Wow.
And that means something to me. And I was out working on the engine this week because I rebuilt stuff. I grew up working on cars. So here I am. I make movies for a living. I can pay somebody else to get their hands dirty, but I got the day off. And I love that it needed help. And I went and gave it the help it needed, and it runs great. And just to make sure it was running, I took it up to Oklahoma this week, and it ran like a friggin' charm.
I love it. That's awesome. You know, as you're talking about life, and I think of tactics versus principles. It's something we talk a lot about in my world, because in the marketing world, everything's driven by tactics. You got to do this, this, and this, these 8 social media platforms. And it's this constant busyness where I've always come from a place of principles, and tactics change with technology. And my rule is never let a tactic, no matter how great it is, violate a principle. So relationships are principle based. So there's certain tactics I'm just not going to do, even though they might work. And you having the acting studio, having students, and everything you've talked about has been 95% principles. And I think you teach your students that. So it's not necessarily do this tactic, do that tactic. It's more about presence, who you are, how you feel about yourself, essence. And what a great gift to give people.
And that answers your own question about what is the extra mile. It's all of that. You know, even in the 12-step program, they close with this statement, ever reminding us, this is the last part of the last sentence, ever reminding us principles before personalities.
Wow.
Which is exactly what you're saying. So don't get so caught up in the personality, but stay true to the principles, that when you honor principles, you wind up faring very well. And honoring principles could at times seem being the operative word, costly in the micro, but in the macro, which frankly is the only thing I care about anymore. Right? So if it's not good for me long-term, it's not good for me. That's my policy, is I think of what are the long-term projections of this, whether it's this product, this way of being, this behavior, this thought pattern. What are the long-term projections? Because what happens in the short term is about as significant as a pimple on a gnat's butt. It doesn't mean that much, but in the grand scheme of things, we start caring about that.
We always talk about principles compound, tactics, you're starting over. So most tactical marketing, they churn through people, they're starting over. But anything that's principle based has a compound.
Compounds. That's great.
I hear you saying the same thing.
I am saying the same thing. And Kyle, the specific deal as it applies to my own life and where I started this program is I was a booking machine. And I don't say that out of ego. I don't know another way to say it. I was constantly booking work. And on my agent's prompting, his prompting, not my own hunch, my agent said, Glenn, do you think you could teach this? And I was 26 years old at the time, because your batting average is insane, and no insult intended. But we think we have a lot of people on our roster that are every bit the actor you are. Really, we want to discuss this with you because you're booking way more than they are. And you're not a better actor, but we love your acting. So what is it you think you're doing that they're not? And it was a brilliant and astute observation, because the answer, they said, or are you? I said, the answer is I am. because I approach this business like I would approach any business, which is from the standpoint of consciousness. And what are my expectations? And what am I asking of myself? What do I expect to happen when I go in the room? And why do I hold that expectation? Right. The biggest one, and this applies no matter, I mean, you don't need to be an actor to grasp this concept. Anyone listening to this podcast will get it. So from an actor standpoint, one of the biggest things that actors do is they use the phrase, I'm going to get the role. And in Texas, we spell get, G-I-T. I know it's spelled G-E-T, but it's I'm going to get it. I'm going, which is I am going to. We shorten that to I'm going to get it. I'm going to get it. I'm going to get the role. And what I train my actors to is to shift that and go 180. So what would going 180 look like? If their strategy or tactic, to use your phrase, if their tactic or strategy is to get the role, what if you go in to give the role? The exact opposite. What if you're not there to take? It's not about what you can obtain, but you're going in there to share a gift in your mind. And this is really your truth. It's a gift of how you interpret the material and how it uniquely expresses itself through you. And I'm here to offer it up as a gift, and then I'm going to leave. And that's it. That's the whole contract.
And you had that at 26.
At 26, I was already doing that I'm here to offer a gift. I'm not here for your approval.
Do you remember how you got to that point?
Prayer.
Awareness, prayer, consciousness.
Prayer and saying, teach me, show me, guide me, lead me. My 4 cornerstones of spirituality. Teach me, show me, guide me, lead me. And I will listen and I will obey.
Were you having failure or you weren't having success? So you, out of pain, you started searching for how do I have more success?
No, it wasn't that I wasn't having success. It's that I was having success, which is similar to other successes I've witnessed. And I wanted to see if we could jack it up a notch or two.
Okay.
That's what it came down to, is I was already working as an actor. And I thought, what do we do? Like anyone who bats in baseball, aren't they always looking for ways to increase their batting average? So what do they look at? They look at their stance. They look at their grip of the bat. They look at their relationship with the certain pitchers, how they fare against lefties versus righties, how they play in certain parks. And what are you busy thinking as you swing the bat? Do you expect to hit it? Or are you someone who's hoping to hit it? And I moved from being a hoper to an expector.
Wow. And so when you're showing up, you also have a quiet confidence, and that probably throws them off a little bit because you have people coming to get and they're insecure and it's competitive, and you're showing up with a presence. And so I think they're attracted to that. They want more Glenn.
Well, the reality is,
guy. I want to work with this guy.
It is the truth, Kyle. It truly is. And what happens is, Dr. Wayne Dyer said this. He said, when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. One of the greatest statements of truth in the history of the planet. When we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. So our perception is what is giving the thing its role in our lives. How do we look at it? And then we look at it from a different perspective, and all of a sudden it changes. And it's not that it is changing, but its effect on us is changing. When we see that difference, it's palpable. So for example, when someone is in there to give instead of get, when someone is in there to have a meeting instead of an audition, and you've heard me talk about that before. Mm-hmm. So all of the other actors, I realize, they're thinking in terms of today's meeting being an audition. The phrase that was used growing up was a tryout. So the thing about an audition, and I stopped using that word many, many years ago. I'm using it now just to explain something, but it's not part of my vernacular. The word audition connotes proving. It connotes earning the good opinion of others. Well, what if that's not your strategy? What if your strategy is simply to be, to connect, to share, and then to leave? And to do all of the above with love in your heart, but no hook. What happens if you live your life from a barbless perspective? There's no hook. There is no barb. I'm here to love, and someday I'm going to die. But when I look back on the entirety of my life, I will have loved. I wasn't here to trick. I wasn't here to coerce. I wasn't here to manipulate. I wasn't here to overpower. I was here to love and assist. That's a life well lived. So what if that's your commitment in every area of your life, with no exceptions, including your acting career? And that was a voice, that was a whisper that came to me. And I thought, well, that only makes total sense. And I started applying it, and I took off like a rocket when I stopped auditioning. The process was the same. I still got a phone call. I still went to an appointment. I still signed in the sheet that was there with the Screen Actors Guild logo on it. And all of those other names were actors who were there for an audition, which meant they were still there to prove and to earn the good opinion of others. I was there to gift. They were also there to get the role. I was there to give, and I was there to be, and I was there to share. And as long as I did those things, that was the victory. And what you'll find is most actors, not unlike most human beings, they always take a wait and see attitude. Well, how did you feel about it? Well, we're going to have to wait and see. Why are we going to have to wait and see? What is it we're waiting for? How did you feel about the vibe in the room? It was great. Well, then celebrate your ass off. Celebrate your ass off, because it already went perfectly. Let me ask you this. Would you want to go back and change anything about that meeting? No. Then why do you have to wait and see? You don't want to change it. You're thrilled with the way you showed up. Then understand that as long as that is always the feeling in your heart, the long-term projections of that are wonderful. You're going to fare very well. Allow me to predict your own future for you. You're living well. You're a celebrator. And you did what you set out to do. Please allow yourself to celebrate. And you know why we don't? Because some schmuck taught us years ago, be careful. You could jinx it. You could jinx it. Evolved people don't believe in jinxing it. I'm not going to say anything after a great meeting if I tell you, Kyle, the meeting went beautifully. ABC is not going to change their mind because vibrationally I told Kyle that it went beautifully. So I don't believe in childish things like you can jinx it. I think that is a superstition, and I think it is fear-based.
This is such great advice. There's a couple of follow-up questions I want to ask. So I don't want to get too much in the weeds. Because you got.
Were we in the weeds, or were we on track?
I'm about to get in the weeds.
Oh, okay.
So I think
because I love what we're talking about right now.
No, what you shared is big. If people can embrace what you shared, it's life-changing. So my potentially going in the weeds would be, you got 3 different deals you've talked to. They haven't sent the contract. You get an invitation to go speak. Do you get proactive to say, hey, I need to have an answer, or do you just let it play out?
You're talking about from movie offers or whatnot?
Movie shows, time, because part of it's juggling the time commitment, right?
Yeah,
Someone says, we need you in Los Angeles for 3 months in this time, but you're waiting to see.
Right. So
they haven't sent the signed contract yet.
Yeah, we actually will pit one against the other. We have no choice. At some point,
that's your agent's job. So that's the answer, I guess, is your agent's dealing with, he's the one that's putting the, saying, hey, I got these different things. And you're just waiting, saying, okay, I trust you. Here's my preference between the 3, but you're not going to get caught up in the emotion of it.
And fortunately, I'm in business with someone who better knows how to do what he does than I know how to do what he does.
Right. So that answered my question. Your agent's doing that part of it.
Yeah. And we do. So for example, one of the strategies he will use is if he wants to get someone to budge, he'll say, go get someone to fall in love with you. Those are his words. Do me a favor. Put this on tape. Take this Zoom meeting. I need somebody to fall in love with you right now. And what he's referring to is because we've got another job and they haven't pulled the trigger, that
Right.
you're already on the roster, but we're looking at a renegotiation and we want them to put a ring on your finger.
Right.
And there's nothing quite like getting someone else to fall in love with you than to prompt someone to take action. So I want you to go get this offer, which will be 3 months on this feature film. And that will put your series in a position where they have to make a decision, because if they don't, they lose you for 3 months. It's not a threat. It's a promise that this is what's going to happen, but you have what's called right of first refusal. So what do you want to do? And it's really pretty simple, yes or no. Because if you want him, then we put a ring on his finger. And if you're not clear, then you're not going to get to rethink it, because we're leaving to go do this feature for 3 months.
Right.
So yeah.
And those are some of the reasons not to go executive produce your own movie, because there's so many. I heard most movies don't get made just because the legal complications of scripts and everything else, right?
Yeah.
It takes years oftentimes to deliver that baby.
Yeah, there are a lot of reasons people's ideas don't ever get made, and one of them is conflicting egos, power hungry people, and the inability to show up as a team player. There are a lot of reasons projects don't get made.
And the movies is another great example of it takes a team. You got to have all the pieces in place. I would think, right? You can't go into it arrogantly thinking you know it all. It's got to be.
And a team that trusts itself, with every member trusting, you know what, the editor, I'm not going to try to edit your movie. I know that you know what choices to make, and then quit trying to do other people's jobs for them. Hire the right person, and then you won't need to micromanage. I mean, if you hire the right person, you don't need to micromanage. And the whole idea of auditioning people, Kyle, that's not indigenous in any way with regard to acting. That's across the board, because you realize that people audition each other all the time. I still see husbands and wives who are auditioning their spouse.
Right.
It's like, at what point are you going to give them the role? Because once you've given them the role, then you're not auditioning other people for their role.
That's gold.
You've actually cast them. Like, you can relax, dude. You've got the role. You've got the role. We're not seeing other people for your role. So I think that auditioning people is something that happens way too often in life. And if you want to secure friendship, quit auditioning your friend. Go ahead and cast them, or don't, and let them hit the road. But don't keep them on that hook of, I could replace you at any time, because that creates insecurity, and nobody thrives when being threatened.
Right.
That's just not a healthy situation. So I'm very anti-auditioning as a way of life. I just don't think it works. And so if you've got someone, think about this, you're seeing a lot of actors, and here they come one after the other, and you're seeing, say, 100 of them that day, which is a big day, but 100 of them. And what you see is proving, connecting. Ooh, stop the presses. We have a connector. Wow, this person doesn't seem really invested in whether or not they get the job. They're just showing up and offering a gift. And then they're leaving, and they're going, what makes them so comfortable? We need that. And then they book it. And that's the way it works. So that's where that program was formed, is that it was all done in consciousness first, to give up the idea of proving, trade it in for connecting, give up competing, trade it in for cooperating and collaborating. Those are my other two big C words that are replacements for competition. I think that when we collaborate, we're stronger than when we compete. And when we cooperate, we're stronger than when we compete.
So powerful. I know I'm attracted to people who have acceptance, who have unconditional love, if you will, people that I don't feel judged by. And there's a lot of people out there right now, they're like, you got to pick a spot, and they're going to go, if you're not in my vibe, you're done. I'm done with you. And it's like, I don't really want those kind of friends.
No.
That can make a decision arbitrarily based on something. Okay, we're done now. I've heard you talk about acceptance and unconditional love. when it comes to family, friends, things like that. Do you have anything you want to share about that?
It's nothing more than just an application of the golden rule, and really understanding that golden rule is not something to merely hear in school, but to live by. And I even think that's one of those that could stand a slight rewrite. And I've done it, just like the Serenity Prayer. And there's another version, by the way, of the Serenity Prayer. There are two changes, both of which are better than the current version, which is God grant me. The two versions, I gave you the one which is God grants me. The other one, which I really love, is God granted me. Granted, past tense, meaning that long ago occurred. God granted me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And then the only thing that matters is that we tag that truth with thank you. God granted me that.
Okay.
And thank you. So the golden rule, which is how I live my life, but it's a slightly rewritten version of that, which is the golden rule as we know, and I'm just stating it for the obvious. I mean, everyone who are watching knows it, but do unto others as we would have them do unto us. What if that rewritten version, and you've heard me say this in other telecasts, what if we change that slightly to do unto others as we would have life itself do unto us? Do unto others as we would have life do unto us. Not necessarily others, because we have no guarantee that when we show someone love, they will show it in return. Now, I will say that I've noticed an uncanny tendency for it to work that way, that when we come from love, we receive love. But I also have noticed it is not seamless, because there are those people who are not adept at the art of being loving. And we can love them till the cows come home, and they dole out ugliness or evil or darkness in response. And here's the problem with that, Kyle, is that if we look for exactly the same on our investments, so return on investment, if we look for it to directly parallel what we gave, what we imbued, then we can lose faith in the golden rule, because there will be those we love that do not love back. That's part of life. It is a very small faction of society, but it's there. There are those who you can help that will bite you. Hence the old adage, don't bite the hand that feeds you. That was created because somebody noticed that there are biters in society. But what if we don't care about how you return my investment in you, because I live at a higher level that understands life is going to pay back whatever you don't? So I don't need you to pay me back. I don't need you to love me. I need me to love you. That's all I need. And as long as I'm doing my job, do unto others as you would have life itself do unto you, then what I know is whatever you can't take care of, life does take care of. So
powerful. And that takes
huge.
us out of being transactional. It takes us out of agendas, just showing up authentically and paying attention to what happens.
Takes you out of anxiety as well.
Yes.
Because what is there to be anxious about if you believe in an abundant cosmos that knows exactly what it's doing, that does not need your precious coaching nor micromanagement, because it was doing it long before you started breathing air? Like, life was busy working before you and I got here. We both know that to be true. And it's going to continue working just fine without us once we die. But right now, we're here to be its friend and to be its soldiers and to work with it in a cooperative manner, so that it's just that much more efficient because of our volunteer nature to be a part of working it. But I don't ever worry about the return from somebody else, because as long as I come from love and passion and generosity, and I'm a giver, life has always taken care of me, even when others didn't. And I can't always say that others took care of me. I have instances when they didn't, but I don't have any instances where life didn't. So that's why I did that slight rewrite of the golden rule. I'm not invested in how my neighbor treats me. I'm invested in how I treat my neighbor.
Such gold here, Glenn. I've heard you talk about 5 words that can change our life. And again, it's about not living in the past, living in the future. Do you remember those 5 words?
Indeed, I remember, because that came from Russell Friedman, who taught me this phrase. And Russell was the head of the Grief Recovery Institute out of Los Angeles, one of the most worthwhile weekends I spent in my life. It is a weekend training which allows you to grieve all of the previously ungrieved hurts in your life.
Okay.
All of them over one weekend. And what Russell
How old were
taught
you when you went through that?
I can give you an exact age. I would have been 34 years old.
Okay.
Yeah, 34 is in 93. So I was 34. And the 5 words he taught us were, that's old, I'm new, goodbye. And the that's old refers to that old habit, or that old way of being, or that old version of me, whatever was previous to this moment. And old, by the way, is right then. It doesn't have to mean 30 years ago. It can also reference 30 years ago, but old means anything that's in the rearview mirror of life. So if you've got something that is old, that is not helping you anymore, it's not serving you, and there is a chance that it never did. And it could be a toxic habit. Maybe someone is trying to let go of alcoholism, or they're letting go of a smoking habit, or how about this one? Negative self-talk, doubt, fear-based thinking. These are all things that are worth letting go of. They all fall in that same category. So what Russell said is, physically look at it as being something that's away from you now, courtesy of the gift of time, to look over at it and say, that's old. And then to step forward, facing straight ahead and declaring to the entire universe, I'm new. And then to look back one more time and say, goodbye. I think it's one of the greatest teachings ever, because there's nothing that can't be let go of when we hold that mindset of that's old. And sometimes it's going to be a relationship, even, where you say, that's old. I'm new, which means I'm not that anymore. Goodbye. Even the caterpillar at some point looks back at the cocoon itself and says, that's old, I'm new, referencing its butterfly structure. And they look back at the cocoon, and it's not an ugly goodbye. It's not goodbye. It's not that. It's goodbye with love in my heart, which means that cocoon is the very thing that facilitated the butterfly I now am. But I also don't need to try to be in a cocoon with these new wings. That cocoon is not where I belong anymore. And I had vowed today, before we ever got on, I didn't give really any thought to it, but I vowed one word to come up, and there it was, and it's the word belonging. Where do you belong? I think that is such a chilling and stilling, it stills us, question. Where do you belong? Because that's what's going to call that forth in your life, when you really just let the chaos and the noise settle down and say, you know, where do I most belong? Forget what I want. What do I hope for? What do I wish? Where do I belong in my life? I belong in integrity. I belong in love. I belong in connectedness. I belong in fairness. I belong in decency. I belong in health. I belong in prosperity. And these are remembrances of belonging. And then what happens is we basically put the entirety of our lives on notice. Get to work, because that's where you belong. So all systems are set out. I'm talking about every aspect of our beingness, both the visible and the invisible, much of which is the invisible, which is at the molecular level, that every bit of cellular activity that is stirring up reality for you and for me. I've just spoken to all tribes concerned and let them know, here's where I believe that I belong. And they do abide by that. They look at you and go, For real? And you go, yes, for real. And they go, okay, so be it then. Let's get to work, guys. And everything goes about creating that result. Everything. And all of a sudden, harmonious relationships are restored. Don't be surprised if your body starts looking better. Don't be surprised if you start feeling younger, and certainly with an increased sense of vitality, because you have a new outlook, which is based on where do you belong. And here's the thing, quit putting yourself in positions where you don't belong. And it's not that nobody belongs there. It's that you don't belong there. Like, what's a nice guy like you doing in this crap? Whatever the crap is. And I can really hear the heavens saying that, like, you do know you're better than this, right? Do you know that? Because I'm here to remind you, you're better than this. That's old. I'm new. Goodbye. And the goodbye is easy to say when you remember that you're better than the place you've been hanging out, and it's time to leave. And I don't think there are too many things in life worse than overstaying your welcome. And that includes in destructive environments. Like, you've overstayed your welcome, cowboy. You push it any further, you're going bye-bye. It's not a threat. It's just a warning from life that you've stayed in this crap long enough. You don't belong here. And it can speak to us on our outlook, that negative outlook you have. You don't belong here. And you can talk to the negative outlook itself and say, you don't belong here. Not in me. This is holy ground. I have a favorable outlook. I love people. Where on earth did I come up with this jaded crap? Law of exposure. Jim Rohn talked about that, about the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? Mm-hmm. You were buddies with Jim. Wasn't that one of his big things?
Right. Yes.
So what are we buying into via the law of absorption? And quit buying into other people's crap. And instead, if you do believe in God, here's a bold question. Why don't you ask God what God wants you to believe? Just go ahead and just, in those words, what would you like me to believe? Because that's what I want to believe. I don't want to believe something just because somebody in a holy garment told me it was true. And I'll promise you, you will only be the recipient of the truth. It is the deepest conversation we can have. A direct question from God. What would you like me to believe? And watch your heart change like that. Everything change. And you realize I'm not here to follow the marching orders of society. I'm here to follow the very God that designed me to be here. I've got work to do, kids. And follow it to the nth degree. I live my life by that. And it doesn't matter what I do, whether it's as an actor, a businessman, a real estate mogul, whatever I had decided to do, that's where my marching orders come from.
What you're sharing is the essence of everything. And when are you going to start doing the extra mile again? Or
I told you I would get to tears, and I'm
the new title of it. What's it going to be? I mean, you're ready. You're ripe. This is.
I am. And you're also looking at someone who's been in a holding pattern because of COVID, who I'm used to being on stage doing this for large amounts of people. And COVID said, not right now. And so I'm ready to get back on stages and do this live because I don't need PowerPoint.
I mean, this almost seems like a retreat, though. This is more than just a 90-minute talk.
Right.
I mean, this is an experience, a deep dive experience.
It is a deep dive. And I thank you for letting me have it.
Well, and you do it with your acting studios too, because you'll go teach for 8 hours and you get into the essence. And maybe that's part of the way you are able to deliver that. But yeah, keep me in the loop on what's that next step for you, whether it's just getting back on stages. I don't mean to say just getting back on stages, but you have something here that's really powerful that I think people need to And I know you can do the interactive. Like, you're one of the most patient listeners I've ever heard. I've been on your clubhouses, and you really care about people. You're really curious about people. So I think getting those that are interested together for a day or 2 days, whatever that looks like, I think could be transformational.
Yeah, I think that's next up for me. I just feel that that's an inevitability.
It is. It is. Yeah, having that experience that goes beyond a keynote.
Did Jim do that kind of thing? And forgive me for not knowing.
No, he wasn't that interactive. He was more of a philosopher and presenter. Tony is much more, interactive. But Jim gave 2-day presentations. We had a 2-day weekend seminar that was totally powerful. But he wasn't a big Q&A guy.
Whereas I celebrate Q&A.
I think what you're describing, what I've heard you talking about, truly would be the same experience you talked about you went through with the gentleman, and when you were 34 years old, Friedman, I believe it was.
Yeah, Russell Friedman.
Russell Friedman. I think it's time for you to provide that experience.
Yeah, I'm happy to pass on the baton on Russell's behalf. And honestly, there's another big thing that's happened since you and I last talked, which is where these tears come from, because losing my brother was a really defining moment in my life. My brother lived to be 22,659 days old. I have it down to the day, and I have it down for this reason. Because on the 7th of May, so we're talking about less than a month ago, I reached 22,659 days. And that day was on a Friday, May the 7th. I was in Atlanta. I had wondered for 2 years and 2 months that I waited for that day, because I began that count when my brother died. I was just thinking, how did he feel at 62 years of age plus 13 days? And didn't know where I would be or if I would be, because you and I don't know that. We don't know. Right. People say, tomorrow is promised to no one. Hell, 30 seconds from now is promised to no one.
Right.
So I don't know that I'll be here, but if I am, that date will be on May the 7th, 2021. And I thought about it, 26 months ago. Well, it came, and I was granted the gift of living to see that date. And I decided that I would set aside that date. And it was so beautiful because the universe conspired to bob and weave to wind up giving me that day off, even though I was in Atlanta, so that I could only think about Brian that whole day. And I realized I got something Brian didn't have. And this is my prevailing thought that morning was, I just woke up. Because he didn't. He died in his sleep. And ever since that day, I feel like I've been carrying the torch for both of us. Because I got to see days that he didn't. And hopefully years that he didn't. And I want to make sure, and I'm committed to living with great intentionality, unstoppable intentionality, and kind of carry us both across the goal line. Because I only had one full-blood sibling. I have stepbrothers that I love and a half-brother that I love, but one human being that was formed out of the same two people that I was. And losing him was very, very hard. And one of the great lessons that it taught me is whenever we're experiencing adversarial circumstances, can we at least agree to this? Let's try to make damn sure we're not the reason they're there. If something is adversarial, let's make sure you're not why it showed up. Because that's our responsibility. That's where we have say-so, as the prayer says, and the wisdom to know the difference. So what are we doing that are causing us problems? And let's take that out of the equation. Then whatever problems are left, they're not of our creation. And then we can truly relax. My buddy Don Phillips said this. He said, you know, Bubba, I decided to finally play for my own team. I got tired of beating myself. And I think that moment when we befriend our own life is a huge life-defining moment. And so anyway, just feeling a lot over these last 4 weeks about my brother Brian, because we do live in a choice, consequence, cause, and effect world. And there were choices that he made that caused him great pain and extensive damage. So as long as we know that for every choice there is a consequence, and for every cause there is an effect, we will live differently.
So Glenn, just final thoughts on that. You being not a bystander, but you watching some things that you had no control over, right, with him.
Sure.
You want to have a positive influence. That would be, there's the 12-step program, and then there's the Al-Anon aspect of it, right?
Sure.
So were there lessons?
Familiar with both.
Were there life lessons for you to learn through that you can't control another person's life?
Oh, yeah.
Even though it's painful to witness.
Yeah, learning a lot about live and let live, and that's, I think, where I learned the lesson that the resistance to that which is. It just was. It was the way it was, and I didn't like it. And what I discovered is it didn't really care how much I didn't like it. It was still there. So there was a lot of acceptance that had to be tapped into, and just accept the things I cannot change. And God knows I tried. I put out as much as I could, and I feel good about that. I don't have any regret, and that's helpful, because I can't imagine having regret compiled with the loss itself. I did what I was able to do when I was able to do it for about 40 years, because the catastrophic levels of addiction started at about age 21 or 22 for him. And so the family went along for the ride. They say that alcoholism is a family disease, and I agree with that, because a whole lot of people who don't want to be on the ride wind up on the ride if they love the person. And that's kind of the hook. That's how we get hooked, is if you love the person. It's pretty tough to just walk away. Doesn't mean you can't, but it's tough. And I never could walk away from my brother. And a lot of people abandoned him, and I couldn't do it. Anyway.
So maybe overarching question is about the word suffering. Do you think suffering is a choice?
I think much of suffering is a choice, because there were things that happened with both of us, and I won't get into them. I'll just say there were things that happened when we were kids that were pretty horrific, and decisions that were made for us that we had zero say-so in. Zero, and including feelings being considered. Not only were we not consulted, I don't really think that the effect that would be had upon us was considered. I think that adults have a tendency to do what they are in the mood to do without a widespread consideration of the extensive possibility of fallout. They maybe only think about their own fallout instead of, what will this mean for the kids if we do things this way? It hurt us both, but I had something to help rebound. And I wrote a chapter about it called The Seesaw, so that in the balance of life, when this ugly thing over here happens, it becomes more tolerable. Doesn't make it okay, but it helps counterbalance if we have something in our life that's wonderful, and then the seesaw rocks back the other way. Well, my wonderful thing was that I was exposed to the acting industry, and I was around people that practiced love and acceptance instead of judgment and criticism and physical beatings. That didn't occur in the acting world. I was raised around people who were just accepted, period. It didn't matter their skin color, their sexual preference, their political affiliation. It didn't matter. You're a child of God. Welcome. And that changed my life. And my brother didn't have that. So his coping mechanism, and we all have coping mechanisms, it turned out I chose, by the grace of God, a healthier coping mechanism and nothing more, because our pain was the same. We were both hurting, and deeply. His coping mechanism was alcohol. And all he wanted to do was not feel the pain. So that's how he anesthetized. But unfortunately, the anesthetic he was choosing was killing him. The anesthetic I chose was uplifting me. It was bolstering my life. That does not make me a genius. It makes me very fortunate.
Yes.
That I chose a better method of coping. And I hurt for him because I wish I could go back in time, which I can't. But there is a part of me that would like to talk to him right before the addiction began, that could offer counsel about choosing healthy coping mechanisms. If you think about it, even prayer, Kyle, is a coping mechanism. Among other things, it helps us cope.
Right.
When we're connected in prayer, we handle life better.
Right.
But if every time a feeling comes in, if we run from the feeling instead of embracing it, we don't ever triumph. And that's the problem with alcoholism and dependency, drug dependency, is it freezes the user in time because life gets tough. They anesthetize, they never break through. And I didn't make this up. I learned this from the programs and the treatment centers that he was sent to and everything, that facing problems is where breakthrough occurs. Breakdown precedes breakthrough. So it's important to go ahead and have your friggin' breakdown. Don't think of breakdown avoidance. Think of there is a breakdown. It's happening now. I'm feeling it profoundly, and the sun will come out again. And there will be a breakthrough. But if I anesthetize, I'm going to rob myself of every lesson I would have learned had I allowed the breakdown to occur, and to admit to myself and the world, I'm hurting. I hurt. And life goes, okay. Do you know that it's okay to hurt? Wow, what a great piece of news. It's okay to hurt. Say that again to me. You heard me right. It's okay to hurt. Thank you. So I don't need to go anesthetize. Nope. Just feel it and know that it's okay to hurt. And look around you and see if maybe you got some company on the planet. You remember that song? Everybody hurts. We all have hurt.
Yes.
So we tend to, single ourselves out when hurt shows up and run from it. And instead just go ahead and feel it and realize everybody gets their turn in the barrel of pain. It's just part of the life process.
It's part, and as you said earlier, it's part of the learning process, right? And so, I've had to learn to judge less, and the less we judge everyone else, the less we might judge ourselves. Right?
Yes.
Because ultimately we've all made mistakes that we wished we could take back, but we can't. And so it is what it is. And acceptance with ourselves and acceptance of other people is, I think, once we get to that understanding of that's part of what life is, and being okay in spite of our failures and other people's failures and mistakes.
Can I thank you for something and congratulate you in the same breath?
Yes.
I've done easily, I haven't counted, but easily 500 interviews in my life. This has been my favorite one.
Oh, wow, Glenn. Oh, my goodness.
My favorite one.
Thank you, my friend.
And I've done a lot, but one that went on and allowed that deeper dive, because, that's one of the things that time limits can rob us of, is like, well, it's over, get out of the pool. But what might we have discovered if we had stayed in the pool just a little bit longer?
Yeah.
And I thank you for that, because it's been very healthy and very cathartic. And yeah, you kind of brought me back in touch with how ready I am to get back on stages I'm ready. I'm ready. Like
You
right
are,
now.
you are ripe, and it's such an authentic thing for you, and it is the next step for you. It's nothing better than when something organically unfolds. It's like the next step. It's there, and so I can't wait to see how you're gonna formulate it. And if anyone can do it pretty easily, it's you. I mean, you have the resources, you have the people, you have the, even like, again, the studio you have, you're used to getting groups of people together, and it doesn't have to start big. In fact, it can start pretty small. And if you can put together that experience for a couple of days, I think it'll be very rewarding.
Yeah. Thank you, buddy.
Glenn, this has been amazing. So grateful for you taking the time. I did want to ask you what you're doing right now in the acting world. I know the Resident's going on.
And I just got back from Atlanta last week from 4 weeks there doing Ozark, which and probably a good thing to close with on.
So Ozark's in Atlanta as well, huh?
They shoot it in Atlanta, yes.
Okay.
To close on this idea of intentionality, that in March, the same thing has happened with so many, but recent displays of intentionality and consciously stated intentionality followed by follow through was the little things. When I told my class in this exercise called, hey, what you claim on your pizza, what you claim on your pizza. And then we would say, I claim Denzel on my pizza. I claim Denzel on my, and I started claiming Denzel Washington on my pizza.
Okay.
And pizza being the metaphor for life, because my teaching is that our lives are as eminently creatable as a pizza is. And when you go into a pizza restaurant and you say, yeah, I'll have a pizza, that's not enough information. They would look at you like you're an idiot. Hey, I'll have a pizza. And they would look at you like, yeah, no joke. What, hey fella, what kind of pizza would you like? That's what they'll say to you. What kind of pizza? Right. And life is no different. Like, you don't just go, hey, I think I'll have a pizza. What kind of pizza do you want while you're here? What do you want? You want sausage and pepperoni, anchovies, what, Canadian bacon, pineapple? What do you want? And get clear. So I started putting Denzel on my pizza.
Okay.
And it was chanted, supported by about 30 students surrounding me in a circle, because this is the way we would open class every week. And the exercise is called, hey, what you claim on your pizza? I claim health on my pizza. And then 30 people around you would go, health, pizza, health, pizza, health, pizza, health, pizza, 4 times, and reinforce it. So for 6 weeks, people were saying, Denzel pizza, Denzel pizza, Denzel pizza, Denzel pizza. And I would even wear my pizza socks. Check them out.
Oh, wow.
See the pizzas?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So I have several socks that I wear that have pizzas on them. I wear pizza socks all the time because pizza is my life. I don't mean actual pizza. I don't eat a lot of pizza. I eat some and I love it. But my life's a pizza, and I'm ordering different ingredients whenever I'm ready to try a new slice. So 6 weeks is all it took. And I got this phone call from my agent. They said, they're interested in you playing Denzel Washington's boss.
Okay. Unbelievable.
And it was great because I got to go straight to my class, because the only ones who knew how cool this story was them. The agent heard about it, but the agent didn't experience it. Right. They had all heard me chanting Denzel pizza. I claim Denzel on my pizza. And I did it, and they joined me. And 6 weeks later, bam, Denzel lands on my pizza. So in January, I made a call and said, hey, Harry, that's my guy, my agent in Los Angeles. I said, Harry, we wrap The Resident, proudly displaying here.
Yes.
The Resident, we wrap the 4th season right around my birthday, April 24th, somewhere in there, I think a few days before. And we don't go back on The Resident until July if we get picked up for a 5th season, which we did. But there's going to be a window of opportunity. Can I just tell you, this is in this conversation to Harry Gold. I said, can I tell you how much I feel a sense of belonging on the series Ozark? And he goes, belonging. And I said, yeah, it's not hope, wish, or want. I actually feel that I belong on the show. I belong there. I see that happening. And I want to, with great intentionality, target that show. Right now, I'm not interested in anything else. During that 3-month window, if they have anything that is even in my age range, I want to be there. It's an extreme priority to me. 7 weeks later, he calls me and says, you know, your sense of belonging on Ozark? I said, yeah. He said, they just called to have a Zoom meeting with you. So it's not an offer yet, but they want to talk to you about a role that is coming up on the show that would be 3 episodes. I was only looking to do 1. I just wanted to be a part of the show before they put it in the history books. We had that Zoom meeting. That Zoom meeting was, in my mind, was already something that had occurred. While I'm in the middle of the Zoom meeting, I'm already on the backside of the meeting, having decided that it went perfectly. And it did. And they offered me the role. And Harry Gold just looked at me and he said, wow, your whole thought about belonging and intentionality. He said, I have some very good news for you. Ozark just called and they want you to do a 3-episode arc. And I think it's one of the best shows that's ever been on television.
It's an excellent show.
I mean, it's a dark
really
show.
Is. Yeah, true.
You don't watch it for its wholesomeness, but that's why they gave us the Andy Griffith Show.
Yeah, it definitely, it's one I watch, and Justin and the cast. Yeah, it's I can't wait for season 4. So
well, in a few months,
congrats, my friend.
Thank you, buddy.
So I want to ask you, and again, I could ask 1,000 questions, so I need to quit asking questions.
I know we need to wrap up, but go ahead.
But I'll ask one last question related to that. You want Denzel on the pizza. You feel a sense of belonging with Ozark. So it's birthed out of something intrinsic, right? So
yes,
before someone says, I want, to be in Spielberg's next movie, and I'm talking to your acting students, you're asking them to come up with something that's intrinsic to them. So they need to do a little bit of searching, because I feel like I have manifested things as well. And equally, there are times I haven't, and it could have been because it wasn't ready to unfold yet. But
maybe the non-manifestation was itself the intended manifestation.
Well, even you and I met, Glenn, about a year ago, right? And the timing of this podcast was what it was supposed to be, right?
Sure.
So things, when they're birthed out of, the right motives and they're intrinsic, is there any advice you give to people on naming what's on the pizza?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it comes down, I mean, this is even biblical. And when it talks about, that it comes down to your faith, it is done unto you according to your belief. Some versions of the Bible say belief, some say faith, but those words are interchangeable. So it doesn't say anything about it being done according to your hope, wish, or want. It says it's done according to your belief. So, and belief, this is where belonging comes from. What is your belief in your belonging? I mean, it was even Gandhi who said that our beliefs become our thoughts become our words become our actions become our habits become our values, and our values become our destiny. Right? And when you compress that, it's our beliefs become our destiny. So there's all the enforcement on the importance of belief. So what are we busy believing? And I think that we have a right to place something on our pizza at the moment of readiness. So if you're going to put it on your pizza, are you ready to eat it? So for example, a student would say, man, I just dream of the idea of making a romantic comedy in France. Be specific. France, not just overseas, France. Oh, I'm ready. And I go, really? You have a passport? I'm sorry, what? Do you have a current passport? Because that's what supports your readiness. And if you don't have a passport, no matter how much you want to go to France, you ain't going to France. And this guy that said that was life-changing for him in more ways than just the passport. So what did he do? I think the kid's a genius. He packed a bag, a physical bag that has a passport in it, and he has it leaned up against his wall next to his front door, and it stays there. That's its new permanent place. And it stays there as a reminder, I'm ready. It's a reminder of readiness. He said, what do you think about that? I said, I think that's top shelf entertainment, baby. That's beautiful. So are you ready to have the things that you say you're ready for on your pizza? Would I have been intimidated to work with Denzel? Because if so, I can't be claiming Denzel on my pizza, because God's not going to give me something I'm not ready for.
Right.
He's not going to put me in the ring with Denzel to have Denzel embarrass me. Oh my God, this Morshower kid can't act his way out of a wet paper bag. But if you're ready, then you declare your readiness by putting it on your pizza. Drama-free is one I've heard people say. Drama-free pizza, drama-free pizza, drama-free pizza, which means they're tired of living with drama in their lives. They don't want any more crap in their lives. So that's really all it is I do believe that it is that havable. And I think it was, I know originally it is done unto you according to your belief. And that was rewritten by Henry Ford in order that it would be more translatable in modern times. And he said that whether we think we can or think we can't, we're right. And that's got everything to do with what you put on your pizza. I mean, if you think you can do it, life goes, yes, you're right. And if you think you can't, life goes, yes, you're right, you can't. So what are we busy believing?
Glenn, this has been amazing. I could keep going, but for the sake of you and your schedule,
I'm going to go put food on my pizza. I'm hungry.
Yes, this has been amazing. If people want to get a hold of you, like, what's the best way to find more Glenn Morshower?
I would say the easiest pathway is through either Instagram or Facebook Messenger. I certainly respond to both. And so, yeah, that would be
so
best.
On Instagram, is it Glenn Morshower?
Yeah, it's Glenn with lowercase GLENN and then an underscore Morshower, MORSHOWER.
And Glenn's really prolific on Instagram. He's got 2 posts, so he's not trying to build his followers. But hey,
guilty as charged.
Yes. And how about if someone wants to learn more about the acting school?
They can reach out to us. I'll give you an email address. It's budipity, BUDIPITY, budipity at AOL.com. And my wife runs the school. She manages it. She will send out the Zoom link for you. We meet on Mondays and Tuesdays. It's an either or situation. You can come on a Monday or a Tuesday, and we have 4 classes to choose from: Monday day, Monday night, Tuesday day, Tuesday night.
And his students
audit. And then from there, if you want to be a part, we have 2 memberships. One is the non-performing member. That's the observer. Very similar to the performing member, except that you will not be required to do scene work. You won't be doing scene work. And then the actors who are ready, they have to send in an audition reel and we approve them, and then they start performing in the workshop.
And, pre-COVID, you would have to come to Dallas. But right now you're doing Zoom. And so anyone in the world,
people from all over the world.
Yes.
Yeah. So our backyard is now the world. I have students from
know
Australia.
Non-actors who are signed up. They're part of my group and they love it. Again, it's going to help them as a speaker. It's going to help them in storytelling. And as people learn today, they're going to get more Glenn Morshower in their life. And you're a transformational person, Glenn. So
thank you, Kyle.
It's been such an honor to have you today, and for our listeners to learn more about you. And it's an honor to call you a friend. Thanks so much, my friend.
Thanks to you, my friend.